Great afternoon, everyone, and welcome to finally chapter 12. It says OC Breakout and retest, of course. By the way, so let's get started here. Thank you so much, guys, for joining today. Today's gonna be a fairly short, easy, and fun class. There's kind of like a not much to it, but still, let's go piece by piece and then dissect the breakout retest, right? So there we go. Also, guys, if for any reason you see somebody or you hear somebody say OC retest, it's talking about the breakout retest. It's just that I just drill your brains with it's not about the breakout, it's about the retest, right? So just so you know, in case throughout the channel you hear that, it's just because I just repeated so much that they have nicknamed it the OC retest. But other than that, let's get it. And let's get it with you guys. So we have Alexander G, the Queen Mode in the house. Welcome. Also, we have French Toaster in the house. Welcome, French Toaster. Really great to see you here. KDGT, welcome, my friend. Also, username. Welcome, my friend, my party buddy. What is up? Who else is in here? Alexander G already shouted you out. So let's get it, guys. And let's begin, or let's get started at looking at the breakout retest. All right, guys. Quick thing is that I will be having a visit today, random day or random hour. I'm expecting a little package, so I might have to pause you guys for just a second. But other than that, let's get it. Let's go to the charts. One second, guys. All right, guys, so welcome. Seems like Dia did have a visit today. It's my cousin, so I just told him, hey, go ahead, save yourself. Also, J Violet in the house. Welcome, J Violet. Great to have you here. As you can see, I might be on a breakout if you read the title of today's show. Nah, just kidding. Just a breakout retest. All right, so let's get started. And guys, I don't know what's about the markets. I don't know what's about the markets, but it's just playing out just like if you were planning the chapters with what's happening in the markets, right? So what do we have in here? Let me give you the heads up. We have a breakout retest, right? So we are basically right now in the retest. Look at that, exactly today, right now, 4 hour time frame. Look at that. It's not about the breakout. And then we have the first retest, right? Sometimes we have a secondary retest like this, all right? It is, and right now, look at that. The next thing that we're looking to a retest, it is a reversal signal. Let's take a look at our other indicators. Since we already have our linear regression oscillator and we have already migrated the ADX to it, I'm gonna be getting rid of the squeeze momentum indicator, right? It's a very good indicator, but we have just a much more advanced one that also colorizes our candles, gets us through zero line, also get us reversal maxed out areas, right? So on and so forth. So there we go. So what we have right here on our linear regression, we are bearish, right? We are bearish. What are we looking for here? Look at the color of that area, right? It's getting kind of like a bright, isn't it? So maybe we could be having just slightly more downward zone, something like in here. This is what we could be looking for. We have kind of like the same pattern. Look at that, going down little range, then maxing out, right? Tipping out and then flipping around. So it seems like we have kind of like the same. We could be looking for that area of support, right? If we take a look at our oscillator here, we have already a reversal. We are on our way to a flip of the ribbon. At this point, I will be either taking it right now or waiting for one more candle. Quick tip, I will be waiting for one more candle, all right? Why? Because we could keep going downwards. So this is what we're going to be dissecting today. Should we be getting into this trade right now, or should we be waiting? All right, so let me explain first what is the breakout, what is the retest, and how we defined it. All right, so very simple. Let's get started with a couple of drawings, manual drawings. All right, let's just say that we have a triangular pattern here, flat bottom triangle. Doing a little bit of a recap of what we're expecting. A flat base triangle usually breaks to the downside, but we don't really care about where is it breaking out based on the triangle. What we like to see, it is the volume accumulation on that triangle. All right, perfect. So far, so good. So what we're having here is basically just a very bad interpretation of market action. All right, and then when we have, it is basically, there we go, this is a break. There is a way to trade, right, where you trade the breakout. So breakout trading, you might have heard that out there in the wild, right? I don't really like to breakout trade. In some certain spaces I will, but we're gonna be looking at that strategy tomorrow. So chapter 12.1, I'm gonna be showing you how to determine whether if we should be looking for a short-term retracement or not. But what it happens in here is that sometimes we have a pullback, right? And what happens with this pullback, it could be even lower of our previous zone in here, basically sweeping lows and then create a higher low. All right, so another way that we could be having some breakouts, and we're going to be seeing a couple of examples of that, it is when we have some other fakeouts. Like for example, we go up, we have a breakout, right? We close outside, so we confirm that breakout, but we need to look at our oscillator. We're gonna be looking for some examples, all right? And then what happens if we close back inside? And remember, this is not new, right? We call this a fake out, and we predict or we speculate that the next hit is going to be the other way around. All right, most likely we're going to have an overshoot, an actual breakout, retest, off we go. All right, we have two different kind of breakouts, bullish and bearish. Right, let me just draw right now at this point a symmetrical triangle. All right, and let's just say that we're going from here and we're doing this, right? This would be a bullish breakout. We break at the top. All right, we go for a retracement. All right, and when we have this retracement, breakout, retest, in most of the cases, right, we are either going to be retracing on the trend line or half the way this trend line is. Let me zoom in so I can give you a little bit more of a detailed explanation here. Let me just hide also this. So what I'm telling you here, it is that we could be retracing, and come on, this thing doesn't let me fully adjust it. Perfect. All right, I think this is it. And instead of going for this trend line, we could have just retracing. We could be just retracing to half the way of the way out, somewhere around here, and then off we go. How do we know this? Because we should be having some other auxiliary support resistance or something in the way, most likely a newborn order block. All right, so when we start seeing that allocation, it is where we start planning for maybe not a full pullback, right? So in this case, we can either decide to go with a half of a position or a full position, but don't worry, we're gonna go over it today. The next thing, it is going to be a bearish breakout, right? Let me just get rid of this. A bearish breakout is going to be the same thing, but breaking to the downside, right? So basically going up in here, ranging, right? And having a breakout, retest, and off we go. All right, remember, it's not about your breakout, it's about your retest. And when we start having these kind of movements, you have two options or even three options. Depending on the volume of that breakout, you can trade the breakout, but I rather wait for the pullback. Remember, the pullback or the retest is not always at the trend line. Sometimes it is slightly crippled. All right, so basically it doesn't go all the way up in this case, and then we have a half of the way from this movement for that then retracement. All right, those are a couple of tips and tricks. Also, when you're having because we already have learned this, right? A buffering zone on your triangle, right? When you have that buffering zone, you want to go through both of those lines. When you're having that breakout, close your candle outside and usually have a multi-candle, 2 or 3 or even more, right? Like in this case, look at how many candles it took it, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, however candles it took, right? Usually this is a perfect book-like breakout retest, right? Sometimes you'll see that we have a one single candle breakout retest, and that is also important to note because at that point you need to look at your volatility factor or your volume factor, and that is because at that point we could be having just a breakout slight retest, and off we go. Again, we're going to be looking into that strategy tomorrow in chapter 12.1. We have a couple of more visitors today. Welcome, French Toaster. Also, we have Digital. Welcome, my friend. Welcome to the channel. Welcome to the class. All right, so let's get it here and let's go in and practice a little bit in here. We talked about triangle breakouts, right? We also have channel breakouts, which is exactly the same, right? Breakout, retest, off we go, all right? Or breakout, retest, off we go, all right? We also have any other kind of breakout retest. This breakout retest, it only talks about breaking out a area of high confluence, right? If you have, for example, and I think I can get it right here. Look at this trend line that we can be drawing here. All right, let's just make it match a little bit better like this. All right, and look at that in here. We formed an inverted head and shoulders, right? The breakout usually comes with a big body candle based on the previous candle size. All right, so the big body candle, it is a big body candle. And I'm saying this with quotations because you need to determine if that is a big body candle. How do you determine that? Well, that depends on your previous candle body sizes, right? As you can see, the closest is this one and only repeated one time. And look at that, this big body candle actually was bigger than any of the previous candle size in there. All right, as you can see right here, we have a big body candle breakout closing. All right, now what we're expecting, look at that, we are already above the zero line. In fact, we cross it in here. Crossing the zero line, if we don't have a support resistance, but in this case we could also had look at that, a trend line, right? You're breaking out. It's not about your breakout, it's about your retest. You see what I was talking about, that farther downwards movement. Sometimes we get a much better re-entry here, so we're looking to have some sort either of order blocking here, and if we don't have it, well, then we start aiming lower. All right, but whatever, at this point let's just focus on this one in here. We have a big body candle. All right, we're closing outside above that area. Usually I wait for a confirmation candle. What is that confirmation candle? Full body and wick candle closing out. For me, that is a confirmation. So what happens? I just give it some time. Look at that, it goes up, and remember, look at where is it, my ribbon at this point. It is at the top right here, in between my reversion or reversal area up there, right? So I have that, then I start having some golden boxes which telling me, hey, we're oversold, we're oversold, we're oversold. And then we have the flip of the ribbon. What also consolidates the flip of the ribbon? Look at that, it looks like you're leaving, or the price is leaving us, right? Because it's moving upwards. So for the wick, the shadow, or the candle stick to be there, right, the body should also need it to get here. So imagine that full candle going up. At that point, we start getting the FOMO, right, the fear of missing out. This is where people start getting in. That's where, based on volume allocation, usually older traders, more experienced traders start selling out, and they create a what? What kind of pattern is that? Right? So if you don't remember what is that called, you can go check it out on the candlestick patterns, or also you can go check out that Going to Basics on the Piper Academy show. That's where we take a look at those candle pattern sticks. All right, so at this point we have a reversal candle pattern stick, we have the flip of the ribbon, we are breaking back inside the threshold, right? And then we're looking for our position. How do I, or why am I not looking, or why didn't get here? Well, first of all, we have another set of supports and resistance created by this area, right? We also have some areas in here. Look at that. So support, 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 right? Resistance, resistance, resistance. So I'm looking to average down somewhere in between, right? And if I start pulling those lines like that, you'll see that I start building up some sort of support and resistance, right? I can even go lower to accommodate for these areas, right? But why do I make it manually if we already have indicators? So why not? Let's use our, first of all, SMA combo, right? And what do I have in here? Very close. Look at that. Look at my SMA combo. It's not about the breakout. We're breaking on the SMA combo. If you don't have the dynamic reactor, then we're going to the dynamic reactor, rejection on the dynamic reactor, support on the SMA combo. All right, maybe not that close enough. What do I have here? Market dynamics, bro. This is an auto-generated trend line. All right, look at that auto-generated trend line. Maybe if I didn't like that, maybe I can go for support and resistances, areas of support. There we go. And this is what I was talking about. Usually, when we have a breakout, we start forming a order block or an order block, right? Usually that order block, it builds up fast, right? It builds half of the way from the breakout all the way to the resistance, and half the way, that's where we start building up our order block. So when that happens, I'm aiming at that order block, right? Why? Because I already know that I can bounce there. So here goes one of those strategies, right? And this is up to you. I usually look at my oscillator, whether I'm above or am I still below, all right? If I'm above the zero line and I've been for a little bit above that zero line, well, then I look at my consolidation score or my volatility factor. I want a low volatility factor and I want a somewhat neutral consolidation score, all right? If I had those, I will be looking into the order block and entering with a full position in here, all right? With a very short or cheap stop loss. So for example, in here, I usually aim at the center of this order block. Quick tip, if you're looking at your order blocks, look at that, you can find the center between those two areas, right? So I can aim it something like that, perfect. And then what I do, I usually go at the bottom of the order block and give myself a little bit of a wiggle room. That's gonna be my entry, all right? At the breakout, start seeing that candle, candle, right? That candle of reversal. Once I see the candle of reversal, I start allocating my possible entry. What I'm waiting for then, flip of the ribbon, coming back down. Look at that. Again, another flip of the ribbon to the upside, add support, and off we go. Perfect. Now, going through dynamic reactor, you have each second chance in here, right? So in this case, we went through the SMA combo first. Not only the SMA combo, we also went through a big area of confluence, which was this trend line, which was also the neckline of the head and shoulders. All right, what happened there? And also, guys, just in case you have not noticed, coming down, little range, V-shaped recovery, high not higher than previous range, that give us 70% chances of ranging. How do we define the range? After the V-shaped recovery on the high that it wasn't higher than this area, that's where we start defining our range, and then we look for the previous area of support somewhere around here. This is usually our range. So what's going on this possible range? We're having an early breakout of that range. It's not about the breakout, it's about your retest. Rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. All right, so let's do it once again. What's happening here? Well, then let's just imagine that we did not took this trade. Maybe it was too far away, was too quick, was too whatever. All right, and then what we got in here, we have a big body candle going through. Are we going through something? Yes, dynamic reactor. right? It's not about your breakout. We start looking for some reversal signals. For example, this candle is telling me, hey, we should be looking for reversals. And then what I look for a flip of the ribbon to the downside in here. Right here, let's mark it, all right? Right here, look at that. I'm starting to look for that reversal. Next candle, all right, I have a volatility candle. Perfect, that's fine. Coming back down, big body candle. All right, maybe I can jump back in here. But then I look my oscillator. Do I have flip of the ribbon? Not yet. Waiting for that flip of the ribbon. Not yet, maybe here. All right, and what I do, I can have two things here. All right, I can front run my oscillator. In this case, the oscillator was one candle behind. All right, we need to make sure that we understand that. Sometimes it's going to be right spot on, like most of the cases, right? Sometimes can be just slightly early or slightly late. That's why we don't only use our oscillator. Here we use also both the linear regression oscillator and the ADX in here. What's happening with the ADX? Well, the ADX have a flip of strength in here a little bit later, right? But that's fine. All right, so what do we do here? Let me just clear this up. Too much doodling here. So I can look for an area of support. So what I'm seeing here, maybe going to this candle, almost impacting dynamic reactor. I usually like to enter it right above, right? Front running what? The flip of the ribbon, or waiting for the flip of the ribbon. All right, right here, candle close, flip of the ribbon, and then I enter. At this point, this is a dangerous trade because I already have a full movement already, or a big body candle with that V-shaped recovery. That's fine. All right, long position, something like that, aiming a little bit below my dynamic reactor. And then what I do, I look for my support and resistances. Let's go and do that. So where do I take my first TP? Look at that. I have a resistance line in here, another resistance line in there. Sorry about that. So this is for me TP number one. At this point, I move my stop to entry, and then I let it run. What am I expecting here? I'm expecting to then get to the next area of resistance. What happens? Goes back down, takes me out, and what is happening right now at this second? Like right now. Well, yeah, it took me out. Perfect. Let's just even Control C it. There we go. It took me out right there. But also, reversal, flip of the ribbon. All right. Something interesting is that we have a support zone in here, which is a soft against a high, right? What are those? Those are order blocks. Remember what we learned about order blocks. They are magnetic. So I'm already going downwards and getting liquidity from this order block. I binging here, the bing, and then what? Which one is higher? Which one has more magnetic force? Upwards, this one. So what am I expecting? Maybe I could be having something like that, and going to hit this resistance. Hey, this is highly bullish. Why is it a resistance? Because it's above price and also has some bearish allocation. So above price, always resistance. Below price, always support. You're only gonna be measuring how big of a support or resistance is going to be based on its allocation liquidity, bearish liquidity or bullish liquidity. All right. So at this point, I have a breakout, retest. I'm below the zero line. This is important. All right. I always tell you, hey, below the zero line, do not take longs. But we are also above dynamic reactor. We are basically neutral. But look at the most or the best reactions. They usually happen, look at that, at the bottom, right? And then have a very strong movement at the bottom. And then they have a very strong movement. So is it worth taking the risk? I would say that we still need to make a little bit more of an assessment. We need at least 3 indicators, right? Or at least 3 signals that tell us, hey, you are in the right way, all right, the right position. First, oscillator. Do I have the flip of the ribbon? Yes. Do I have a reversal? Yes. All right, perfect. Do I have some support? Yes. Do I have some liquidity? Yes. All right. So my entry was in here, right? Or maybe I can go with a very late entry right there. Stop loss below my dynamic reactor. Give myself a little bit of a wiggle room. This is going to be half of a position. Why? Because just the playground is right here. That's it. But is it worth risking all of this chunk? I don't know. That's why I'm aiming for half of a position, right? It's not about your breakout. It's about your retest. And then off you go. TP number 1, moving your stop to entry. And then most likely, I'm not saying that this is going to happen for sure, but most likely retrace back down. All right? So perfect. That is a breakout retest. Let's take a look at other breakout retests, for example. Right here. Let me just clear this up. All right. And I also want to show you some fake outs and breakout retests that didn't play around or did not happen to exist at all. All right. What are we having here? We have a support. And then this support is a little shifted. I think this is going to be a much better support. All right. In this case, do we have a breakout? Yes. Do we have a retest? No. Where do we have our support in here? This is the flip of the ribbon. Should we be getting right there? Well, then, do we have a support in there? Maybe, maybe not. This is our next support. Let's see if we can still have a support. There we go. Did we have it? Yes. So what we do, usually we go for a risky entry for long. All right. What's going on in here? We do not have the bounce because we are below dynamic reactor. Look at the difference where we are at this point. We're above dynamic reactor, right? You see the difference, the key difference between those? All right, so no retest first, right? Then the area of retest failed. And then where do we call our entry? Right here, right there. As we already have a confirmed flip of the ribbon. What is my confirmed flip of the ribbon? Right here. All right, where do I call out my stop loss? Right there. That's it. I'm going to be telling myself, well, then I'm wrong at this point, and I need to retrace and reassess. All right, so what's happening here? Then I see a V-shaped recovery, 70% chances of ranging. I'm flipping upwards. Can I break it? Well, then what's going on in here? Remember, morphology of a pattern. At this point, I'm having something like a megaphone, right? And remember always that I told you this also looks like a what? A Y-cup. Usually the third one is the charm, right? So look at that. First one coming down, ranging, coming down, ranging, right? First, twice, coming down, ranging. This is the third one. Yes, we have a sweep of the lows, a very, very bad sweep of the lows. And then finally, we go upwards. Let me clear this up. All right, because right here, we have a higher low. We don't really have a breakout retest in here. I mean, if I can force it, I would tell you that, look at this big body candle breaking through, right? It's not about the breakout, it's about your retest, all right? But I'd rather see this as a higher low, and I'd rather wait for it to, what, consolidate into a possible trend line. Why? Because once I have one point, I can create a second point, right? I can wait for a second point, and once I have that second point, let's do this a little more professionally, I could do a trend line. All right, you see that? Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Now let's apply what we have learned. Remember, breakout on any interest area, all right? Not interested from you, interest in the market, where we have big confluence, where we have multiple things in confluence, right? Necklines, right? Boundary of triangular patterns, right? Boundaries or of megaphones, boundaries of wedges, right? All of that all together. So, hey, JR, welcome. OC, good evening, my friend. Welcome. Thank you so much for stopping by. Maybe Band-Aid, welcome, my friend. Welcome. Great to have you here. Thank you so much for stopping by. And we have S Bitcoin. What's up, bro? I'm not gonna be reading your full name, but really glad to have you here. And also we have Harry Piper. Welcome, my friend. Killifant, welcome, welcome. Hey, we are in a full house today. Really appreciate you guys passing by. All right, so are you guys gonna be taking this? Are you gonna be waiting for one more candle? I would say that I'm gonna be waiting for one more candle just to consolidate this. I mean, I'm already late to that entry, so what gives, right? So what gives? I mean, I could maybe hunt for my second chance, right? And then off we go to the upside. Let's go over a couple of coins today, and then we're gonna be calling out the session because tomorrow we're gonna be looking at different stuff. I want you guys to have enough time to practice in this breakout retest scenario, right? Remember to go over your indicators, your support and resistances, so on and so forth. So for example, here we got what we got here, big body candle going through dynamic reactor. It's not about your breakout, it's about your retest. Off you go to previous highs. TP number one, move your stop to entry. What happens? It takes you back down. Rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, right? At this point, let's take a look at what's happening in the oscillator. All right, time is ticking, and remember that a flat range, or by any means any range, all right, maybe sometimes slightly tilted upwards or sometimes slightly tilted downwards ranges, they are correction over time. So this is equally as the price going lower for then taking some support and then blasting through. But also they have their expiration date. All right, what is their expiration date? Your oscillator. All right, it's not that the oscillator is going to be determining whether the price breaks out, but it's going to be measuring how is that sentiment or that momentum shifting around, right? Based on both speed of the money rushing in and the volume allocation, right? Another important thing that we have talked about, it is both order blocks and, oh, where are you? Liquidity zones, all right? Again, I mean, support and resistance, of course, they are super important. But, and there we go. We have support. We have dynamic reactor, right? We have another support. What else do we have? Oh, by the way, this is a great example. Let me just clear this up. This is a great example of not having an actual big body candle breaking through, all right? We have a trend line. Is this a breakout retest? I would say that this is not. Why? Because we look at the past with this big body candle week, which looks big body candle, right? I mean, compared to these ones, it is. But look at this one, right? And it wasn't a breakout. So it's just too close, too similar to say that this is a breakout. This is what I call a lazy breakout, or a fake out, right? So in this case, we could be going like that, and then maybe forming another pivot, and then readjusting the trend line, all right? Just so you know what's going on in there. So this is one of the examples I'm gonna be telling you that this is not an actual breakout, right? I need a bigger candle, something like that, maybe twice, going through a support, going through a resistance, right? To have a breakout retest. Off we go. And why am I aiming downwards on Ethereum? Because look at that, we are starting to shift, right? Or we're shifting slightly lower. So is this a for sure breaking downwards? Of course not. We want more downwards movement here on your oscillator. We want to start losing our prime score, and we also will start putting some lower highs in here, all right? For then maybe right here on the breakout, rejecting on that zero line, maybe having this movement all the way up here, maybe putting a lower high, and then we look for our breakout retest. And let's see if we have some order blocks. There we go, nice retest, and then off we go. What is our target? All the way here where everything is bunching up. This is Ethereum, 4 hours, right? Let's take a look at Turbo very quickly. Do we have breakout retest? Not really. Look at that. We're moving with the dynamic reactor. We have an empty space in here, and we already have lost. We have lost the zero line. Are we gonna fail? Most likely we are. All right. So maybe the breakout is gonna be all the way the movement. So what could we be maybe experiencing? it's going to be, look at this other channel creating some support and resistances all the way down there, right? Let's bring up this move. So we could be experiencing some FOMO because we could be seeing maybe this itty bitty breakout retest, which I'm not going to be calling a breakout retest, right? Off we go, and then a bounce to then a further movement to the downside. Just be careful with this bounce. Why? Because since we're bearish, we might not have enough momentum to hit all the way up in here. So when we start going downwards in here, we need to locate or see if we're forming some sort of order blocks right there. So what? I mean, so when we bounce all the way to the order block and not to the resistance. Basically creating a dead cat bounce and a better movement to the downside. So in this case, it's a bearish breakout, retest your entry, and off we go. All right, guys, I think this is gonna be it for today. This is a fairly short class. Tomorrow we're gonna be going more in depth on breakout retest. I'm gonna be showing you how to determine whether you should be waiting for that retest or not. I have a work in progress that uses the oscillator. So if you're not using the prime oscillator, sadly I haven't tried with any other oscillator, but still give it a try with a linear regression oscillator to see if we can do it. So Wick's wife in the house, welcome. All right, guys, other than that, thank you so much for joining. Tomorrow we're going to be wrapping it up with chapter 12.1, and till then, guys, and as always, see you guys tomorrow.